John Dewey, the most prominent philosopher of education in American history, believed that experience plus reflection equals growth. If we don't reflect on our collective experiences, growth is not possible.
Remembering is actually a power. It makes us whole.
We live on in memory, and that is so important to people, to hold on to those memories of loved ones and shared experiences.
If we can't remember those moments in time, it's hard to remember a life we've lived.
Stetson University is a place where learning and values meet. And remembrance and memory are important values to this community, to any community of learning.
All of our collective memories create the soul of this place. And that's all built up by the power of memories.
As a university that's been in existence for 140 years, it's really important that we think through critical moments in our history. We almost lost such a story at Stetson University. 45 years ago, a tragedy occurred.
We were up on this mountain on January 15, 1979, and everything changed.
41 of us went on a study abroad to 6 countries.
And what started out as a very exciting day on the ski slopes just turned into a tragedy when an avalanche took the lives of 3 of our Stetson colleagues and friends.
Katy, Scotty, and Dennis Lawn.
But we were just stunned. We didn't know what to think. I didn't know what to think.
It was devastating. And it's definitely a story that's fallen by the wayside.
It's really been years for me to process it. And even today when I'm here, I can hardly believe that all that occurred.
This memory was almost forgotten, not because it was intentional. It was almost lost to time.
When I learned of this story, I felt it was absolutely critical that we support this effort by alums and our faculty and others that want to make sure that this story is told fully and completely at Stetson.
Mini-mester really was that transition between the fall semester and the spring semester, and it was really an opportunity to focus for 1 month on a subject you were interested in. And in my case, I had the opportunity, amongst others, to go on the business school program to Europe. And this is 1979, and this is the greatest thing ever.
Well, Mini-Mester was always just an opportunity to enjoy the social aspects of being a college student at the time.
It's interesting because a lot of us maybe didn't have an interest in the business school until it came time for the European trip, and suddenly we're all interested in business. So,
And the head of our accounting department and the dean of the business school were the chaperones for the trip. And they had planned this marvelous trip where we would be introduced and going to international businesses. It was just hugely exciting.
I knew quite a few of the students because I was a Sigma Nu little sister on the trip. It began in Atlanta, Georgia, where Dennis Long was going to give me a ride from Atlanta to DeLand. He was really looking for a new beginning. This trip was going to be great for him. And Scotty, Finland, was a member of Sigma Nu. I knew him well, and he was a great guy. He was having a good time on the trip.
Scotty Fenlon was a good friend of mine, tremendous athlete, very reserved, pensive almost, but with just a wicked sense of humor and a wicked smile. He was the silent, quiet, never get caught kind of guy. And everybody kind of hung stuff on me, which was generally pretty accurate.
So we got to DeLand, and then from there we flew to New York City and then flew to Italy.
We drive by the Coliseum. I can't believe I'm seeing something that I've seen in history books, that I've heard about gladiators. We are out on our own. We're having to figure out where to eat. We don't speak the language. We're laughing. We're saying, what did you do? What'd you do?
I was super excited and never been to Europe. It was a really big deal, really, for everyone to go on this trip. It was actually an extremely cold winter for Europe. It snowed in Rome, and they said it had not snowed there in years. So that was kind of a prelude to what we were going to face in Innsbruck.
And then we came to Innsbruck because that was going to be our free day, no business travel, and we were going to be able to ski.
And we get to Innsbruck, and oh my God, I think I'm in a Christmas card.
It snowed 3 feet that night. I'll just remember it was maybe the prettiest scene of the whole trip. Pretty much everywhere in town where you are, you look up and you can see Sigrid. It's such an amazing mountain. It was pretty intimidating coming here and going up the very steep chairlifts.
We were all very excited to see either snow or to ski. Most of us, of course, being from Florida, were very much looking forward to that. So everybody was talking, are you going skiing? Are you not going skiing?
I was not that fired up to go skiing because I'm not into the cold weather, but I was going to try it. I thought I'd enjoy it.
Innsbruck was one of the highlights for a couple of people on the trip. One of them was Dennis Long. Although he was from Louisville, he was a pretty good skier.
For some reason, I put myself in the intermediate group, which was high up on the mountain. There was a group in the bunny slope. I don't know why I did, but maybe because my friends were there.
We were so excited. We woke up that morning to get on the slopes. They said, nope, no skiing today. We were devastated because this was going to be our fun day.
And they say, hey, listen, you can't really go skiing until we're worried about there's too much snow, it's wet, avalanche, and I'm like, whatever. Okay, fine.
My job was, I was responsible for the cable car and for all the doing on that place. And of course, in the wintertime, I had to make in a group, in a commission, the decision about the situation from the avalanches and the risk of avalanches.
I never would have thought that an avalanche might hit the slope. So we have to the right steep slopes where the avalanches come down regularly, but was very unlucky that on this day there was an avalanche nobody would expect.
At that moment, nobody reckoned that it would happen at this point, because this was basically the safe point. All the other areas which are much steeper are much more avalanche prone than this slope would be.
And therefore we opened the place for the ski area, for the skiers.
And then within a couple hours, they had opened the slopes, and so we were able to go up.
You're going up this big mountain and you're going, oh my gosh, am I really doing this?
We were down on the bunny slope. That's where I was with maybe there's 10 of us down on the bunny slope. And we're laughing, we're kicking snow at each other, throwing snowballs.
So I was on the bunny slope just trying to stand up, to be quite honest. But some of my friends, I had my sorority sister, Katy, and a number of the others who grew up in the north and skied, they were going up the lift to ski down.
We went up, and I was in a ski class with, I believe, 15 people. Mostly, I'm assuming were much better skiers than me. To my right, about maybe a foot, was Katy. We had just started the class.
I take a run down on the bunny slope, which is really no slope at all. Try to jump my way to turn around, and when I turn around and look back up, I see our group sort of crossing across the face of Mount C group. It's kind of a bowl. And I see something changing on the mountain.
We looked up because we started hearing something, and we began seeing snow coming down the mountain. I do recall a brief moment of a bit of awe, not sure what this is, but then immediately whatever you're realizing comes to you that this is not spectacular, that this is snow.
The instructor said, I see an avalanche. And he said, okay, everybody get your poles ready. You're going to try and ski ahead of it. I turned around and looked at the avalanche instead, and it was probably, like 7 blocks away. And as soon as I turned back around, I put my poles down, and it was at my feet. The snow was pouring at my feet.
I looked up, I saw it coming, and I literally saw people getting caught up into it. The snow just kept tumbling and tumbling and tumbling.
It's sliding down, and I see our people skiing across it, but this mountain is falling in. The snow is coming down.
I never moved as far as my location. It went straight over me. It took my gloves off, almost like diving. Katy, we were about 20 feet from the ski lift, and she went into about a 20-foot drift.
It's not stopping, and we can't ski. And behind us, they do hang gliding. So there's only a ledge here. So that's when I started thinking about, what are they going to tell my father? Because today I'm about to die.
I was able, because I was laying down and you really couldn't move, but I was able to get about an inch air pocket. And so that was extremely lucky that I was laying that way. I was hyperventilating when it first happened, and I was just hysterical, but I realized that wasn't going to help me, so I had to just completely calm down.
Where I was, they just took us right down right away, and we were waiting down below. But they got us to a place, and they said, just stay safe, just stay in here.
And then it stopped. And we realize that people are in that snow, and it's us. We're looking for people to help us, and we realize we're the only ones there.
Really, the worst of it was over, and it was just basically a search and rescue effort at that point.
We climb up this mountain of snow, and there's poles, and there's gloves, and there's hats, and we're just clawing through it, and we find somebody. He's encased. He can't move his arms. We help him, and you see heads starting to pop up, and you're like, okay, let's just help get him out.
We dug out my friend Hunt Perry. I remember we found him pretty quickly, but I think he did have some frostbite damage, if I remember correctly.
And then the bells started coming up from the valley. I remember those vividly. And I was later told that's how they signaled an avalanche.
The church bells, just almost within minutes, just started pealing out, telling everybody that help was needed and fast.
I was under for 30 minutes, and I prayed and I thought about my loved ones. Then we heard the dogs and could hear people talking, and I knew then that I would be rescued.
I was a member of the fire department of the Innsbruck, of the voluntary fire department, and we had to stay there and be aware if we would have to go up in the evening, because it wasn't clear how many people were trapped in the avalanche.
Many had been found. Helicopter had been taking people down. But we started searching right about here where I'm standing now.
They couldn't get me out because someone from South America his leg was wrapped around my leg. So they couldn't pull me out. He was down another 6 feet. They did get me out, and they got him out and went to the hospital.
The ski patrol and everyone was there, and they were wonderful in telling us what we could do, which was not much of anything, but we did the poles, and we put our poles together, and we stood in our line, and we gradually moved up to see if we would hit anything.
The procedure of a search line is that people are standing shoulder to shoulder, and with the poles you push them down into the snow until you have your resistance, and bring them up again. And then it's a small step, and then you put the pole in again, and therefore you can find somebody in that area.
But this jabbing and then the step forward, the jabbing and the step forward, and you'd find somebody, and it was throw the pole down, jump in, get them out. It was just exciting to find somebody.
At some point, I realized that Dennis wasn't around. And so he quickly became sort of the focus of what I was looking for.
And they start wanting to get us off the mountain, and we're struggling with, we don't have all our people.
I mean, I guess that wasn't really something in my mind, that I was thinking that somebody wasn't going to come out. You're like, okay, they're rescuing, they're out there. It's going to be just a matter of time.
I don't remember the timeline. I do know that he was found. I remember him being sort of pulled out of the situation. I think he was taken away for further assistance if there was any way for revival.
And I remember they were herding us off to go down the chairlift, and I look over and I see Scotty. And he had this beautiful Irish sweater on with prints on it. And his eyes were closed. They were beating on him. And that's when I knew.
At some point, I know I was asked to identify Dennis's body. And so that was a very tremendous thing. So that was difficult.
I was just terribly upset about Katy because she was right next to me and just wondering about it. And I remember hearing that John Van Noorden was the only person who skied to the bottom. It was kind of hard to comprehend for a few days to really understand what happened.
So we found some of our classmates, and we lost some of our classmates. It was a very, very tragic but life-changing experience.
But avalanches are very common here. I mean, we have avalanches every year. Different sizes, large sizes, small sizes. This was basically a very small avalanche, but it was a very disastrous avalanche.
It was a shock for us, but it was a shock for all Innsbruck. There are different places where you could imagine there were avalanches or could be avalanche, but no one thought that on that spot could be an avalanche.
I think it's part of living here, avalanches, so we can't control nature 100%.
That night, it was basically told to us that the three of them were lost.
Dean Furlong and his wife were going to go back with the personal effects, and people could think about what they wanted to do. Were they going to continue on? We had the last stop at Munich, or were we going to go or stay?
And I remember calling my father, and it was 6 a.m, and it's not like him to answer. Dad, it's Jill. Yeah? There's been an accident. Yeah? I'm okay, but not everybody else is.
We were in line, all 40 of us, one telephone. When I got to my turn, I called. My mother answered. She'd already heard about it. It was so upsetting for them that they flew to New York to meet me.
He said, are you coming home? I go, no, I'm staying here. I'm staying here, Dad. There's nothing I can do at home. And I want to be with my friends.
I do vividly remember the people of Hungerburg were amazing. And as we walked out of the inn and up the hill, the streets were lined with residents holding candles. So our whole walk up the road was just candlelit with people acknowledging their grief for us.
All of the fire department attended the service, and then we saw the students, of course.
I do recall, kind of walking to the church as a group and the somberness of it, but also appreciation and the love for the people that were there. And they were sharing, obviously, our grief and our sadness.
To me, it was a great comfort to be in church because my faith is very important to me, even though I couldn't understand a word of the service because it was in German, but it was a beautiful experience.
It was the perfect thing for us to do that day, to be able to go in there and reflect on the 3 who died. I had gotten to know Katy earlier in the trip, had dinners with her. I will always wonder why she was a foot away and she died and I didn't. So, I often wonder about that.
And the people of Hungerburg were just so loving. You felt their love and their compassion for a group of students they didn't know who we were. It was wonderful.
It's just like you be a big family, and it's just normal that the community gathers and prays for those who didn't survive the avalanche.
We get back. Many of us are in our last semester of college, so there wasn't a lot of energy and thought put into it. And there was pain, I know, especially with the chaperones, tremendous pain. So it sort of just happened and we moved on.
There was a memorial service held on campus, and many students attended the funeral services for Dennis, Katy, and Scotty. But the only physical reminder of the avalanche established on campus was the flagpole and plaque that the Sigma Nu fraternity erected in memory of their brother, Scotty.
Unfortunately, time just moved on and people moved on. There wasn't much in the papers about it. It did make national news, but with the 24-hour news cycle, it was gone, and the same thing here locally. One of the real tragedies in my life with his loss is we didn't get to grow up together, and that's painful to me even to this day.
There was one article in the newspaper. That was it. And then we never gathered again.
And I just didn't talk about it. I really didn't. It's kind of tough to talk about. It really is.
I came back on the Stetson Board of Trustees after a sort of a sabbatical away, and John Tishner said, this is so exciting. What would you think about teaching in Innsbruck? And I go, well, I've been to Innsbruck. I was in the avalanche. And he goes, what are you talking about?
So when I heard about the Innsbruck program, I'm thinking, why isn't that wonderful? We have a program in Innsbruck in memory of what happened here. And I ask them, and they're like, what? No. I'm like, what do you mean there's no connection? And they're like, no, not really.
And I said, John, do you not know about the avalanche from 1979, where 3 Stetson students were killed? And John started crying. And he said, no, I don't know about it. It was painful for me to see and realize that Stetson had forgotten.
The story just wasn't widely known and wasn't widely circulated throughout the years. I had been at Stetson for almost 2 decades, and I had never heard of the avalanche story.
And we started asking ourselves, how can we forget this? And then we started talking about soul and the things that we forget and the things that we push back and the things that we don't go touch in our past. I reached out to Susan, who was standing next to me on the mountain.
And I'm like, well, Jill, you're hit the right time, because I've been thinking the same thing. We're all around 65. If we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? It's been 44 years, so.
I came over last year, which was the first time I'd been here since 1984. I taught a course on leadership, and I decided pretty quickly we were going to talk about how do the students lead from the bottom up to have Stetson touch its soul. What they did not understand and what frustrated them the most was a story like the avalanche story. Why didn't they know about it? They really were asking questions. Jill, you talk about soul of Stetson, but souls require you to remember.
I was surprised that the story hasn't been told, especially since a lot of my friends at other universities have memorials for tragedies like this that have occurred, or even just verbal memory that's been passed down from student to student of things like this.
Being in Stetson, I want to be remembered for what I did. I feel like remembering is what makes us human. So it's just important to remember them.
And so these students really inspired me to go back and say, not only is it time, but we need to start looking at Stetson's values. And we need to start looking at what else we've forgotten.
As this effort to preserve this important history started to emerge, it became clear that a visit to Innsbruck was absolutely central. It's going to preserve the truth of what occurred. It's going to preserve the experiences that occurred.
We had a really wonderful group of people with us this summer in Innsbruck. We had 71 total. Of those, we had 41 students, a number of faculty and staff, and then 5 of the alumni who were on the mountain that day came with their family members.
Our trip to Innsbruck this summer, I was super excited about because I feel it's great for trustees and others at the school to travel with the president and have this wonderful experience. We're fortunate to have a summer program in Innsbruck to come visit.
A number of us are back who could be back, and a number of us who couldn't be here are with us in spirit. We have that collective spirit. They're thinking of us while we're here right now.
It was great meeting the rescuers, then going with the alums to the mountain where it took place. Being up there was amazing.
Today, when we have been here walking back to the situation where these things happened, it was a very emotional situation back again.
A lot of the people who were up at the avalanche were about between 35 and 50 years old, so a lot of them already have passed away. I was happy and fortunate to get 2 people up there from the rescue to bring their experiences. I think that's really good for me to see how this reunion worked.
For me to be able to talk about it on this trip with the rescuers was amazing because we were all together talking about it, and they were filling in gaps. I was filling in gaps for them.
They had a criminal investigation into what had happened. We knew none of that.
This meeting today was from the group. They have been very, very emotional from my side. And some situations from that day came over. It was an emotional feeling, really.
Normally you don't see the people anymore which you have rescued. And it's just a great feeling to see them alive, and it's just a great feeling to see them.
I saw many avalanches, and that's why we feel a lot with these students, attached with the Stetson University.
This is the first time I'm back in Europe after 44 years. I have not been back since, but this is something I could not miss.
I personally think there's nothing more meaningful to strengthen a group of people, because I think this travel together and this bonding strengthens the university.
I realize I might not have ever been back to Innsbruck if Stetson wasn't offering this opportunity. This is really important to me to be here. I don't think I would have ever made the time to be here, and I'm so glad I did.
So here we are in Austria, 44 years later. It's comfortable, it's warm, and it's Stetson. There's a remembrance here, whether it's tradition in these rooms. It's nice to be back after 44 years with the people I love from Stetson.
One of the things that's been inspiring, fascinating, and frankly beautiful is the fact that our alumni are deeply committed to figuring out ways in which we can take the experiences that took place in Innsbruck and bringing them to our campus here in DeLand, Florida, to make sure that that history is preserved and that additional learning can take place for students not only today, but into the future.
We started thinking about what we heard the day of the avalanche, the bells coming up from the valley. And there's Holy Tower in DeLand that had bells, and now it's Holy Stump. It's been lost. The music's been lost.
Ever since the tower had to be taken down, we've wanted to rebuild Holy Tower. And now we have the opportunity, thanks to a group of Stetson alumni who want to make sure their story is not lost to history.
We're really hoping to preserve memories. We're hoping to rebuild the tower, and we think that we can remember our friends by putting new bells in the top.
So we visited the Grassmere Bell Foundry so that we could explore the idea of having bells custom made to memorialize Dennis, Katy, and Scotty as a part of the Holy Tower reconstruction effort.
They're making bells as I'm sitting here talking, and it's very exciting to see the craftsmanship they do.
All over more than 100 countries of the world, bells are ringing from this town, Innsbruck, from our foundries.
The bells are quite significant, obviously, especially for those of us who were there, and hopefully they're there for eternity.
When Jill first sort of introduced this project to us, I just thought it was a tremendous opportunity. I think it can be a great place for reflection for students and the DeLand community at large.
People, when they hear about the bells, are going to know about the story. So it's really a nice way to commemorate that.
Since we can't bring Katy, Scotty, and Dennis's voices back in their human form, we can bring them back in music. And the bells that we are buying are individual, just like Katy, Scotty, and Dennis were different. So by bringing the bells back to DeLand, we're bringing Katy, Scotty, and Dennis back.
Our current students are not only going to learn about the history of what occurred in Innsbruck, but it's going to be a very powerful space for remembering all that have touched Stetson in one way or another.
Deep down, we always hoped there could be a memorial, and this will be a very fitting memorial.
People aren't going to know them personally, but they'll maybe, stop and think and look them up and see what happened.
Passing on these stories and these memories can affect you. You feel for it because that's a member of your community that's pouring in their values and their emotions into you.
What we're trying to do is document things that have happened so that we are defining the soul of the past and the soul of the present.
By hearing our stories, I hope that the incoming generations of students know their stories will be remembered and that their stories will be part of the soul of Stetson and form an even stronger foundation for the next generation beyond them.
Though it is currently a shell of its former self, Holy Tower for 70 years has been an iconic space at Stetson University.
Holy Tower is really part of the tradition of Stetson. The bells were sort of a reminder every day that you were in a unique environment. It was all part of the atmosphere of Stetson at the time.
The rationale for the building of the tower serves two parts. One is a memorial for Lincoln and Eloise Holy. Secondly, to bring music to the citizens of DeLand. Lincoln Holy funded it out of his pocket, and so it was essentially his gift.
Holy Tower in its full height was an important memory for so many people to hear the bells at 6 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock in the morning, in times of celebration, concerts. It brought people together.
Students were taught how to play the bells, and they were played at certain times for the town as well as for the school. And they played the alma mater, they played Christmas carols. There were different times that they would play different, at that time, hymns, because it was a Baptist school.
I love when they rang the bells for dinner at 6. You might have been sitting there studying or talking to a friend and you knew it was time to go to dinner. It's funny now thinking that everybody went at the exact same time.
Holy Tower mattered. It mattered to the people who heard the chimes. It mattered to the people of DeLand.
In 2004, when there were 3 hurricanes back to back, it caused significant damage, and there were parts of the tower falling down.
And so a decision was made after, I think, much deep soul searching and concern over the loss of the tower that it was going to have to be selectively demolished.
When the president's staff gathered with President Doug Lee, there was indeed around that table in the Land Hall boardroom a profound sense of sadness. The engineers concluded that we might have been able to reasonably repair the top of the tower, but the decay of that steel superstructure was so severe, it was a serious threat.
Though I think Stetson University has done a nice job preserving the bells that were once in Holy Tower being dispersed around campus. the building itself is in peril.
It is very important to restore and to protect and to preserve our history. There is so much history that goes into that tower.
It was documented in both measured line drawings and photographs, so we'd have a permanent record.
More than just a hope, it was an intent to restore the tower at some point in the future.
Ever since the tower had to be taken down, people have wanted to rebuild Holy Tower. And now, thanks to a group of alumni who want to make sure their story isn't lost to history, we have the opportunity to help us think through how we remember everyone, how we remember traditions, to rebuild Holy Tower through their story.
41 of us from Stetson went on a study abroad to 6 countries.
One of our stops was Innsbruck, Austria. And what started out as a hopefully very exciting day on the ski slopes just turned into a tragedy when an avalanche took the lives of 3 of our Stetson colleagues and friends.
There was immediate shock, and the church bells started ringing. And that's how people knew to come to help.
It was devastating. And it's definitely a story that's fallen by the wayside.
It was painful for me to see that Stetson had forgotten. I reached out to Susan, who was standing next to me on the mountain, and Susan and I said, not only is it time, and Stetson's going to know about this avalanche, but we need to start looking at what else we've forgotten. And she and I both looked at each other and said, Holy Tower.
We're really hoping to preserve memories. We're hoping to rebuild the tower, and we think that we can remember our friends by putting new bells in the top.
So we visited the Grassmere Bell Foundry so that we could explore the idea of having 3 bells custom made to memorialize Dennis, Katy, and Scotty, as well as consider getting a full carillon to bring back to campus as a part of the Holy Tower reconstruction effort.
It's a very moving idea to think that we're bringing the bells from Innsbruck to DeLand. It's like bringing the 3 students' memories back.
Talking about memorializing them through the tower is fabulous. I think the bells are quite significant, obviously, especially for those of us who were there.
People, when they hear about the bells, are going to know about the story. So it's really a nice way to commemorate that.
I'm really glad that now the alumni are coming forward and making sure that the story is being spread. And we need to make sure that the memory of those students and the memory of the Stetson values that go along with this event are passed down.
It's about community and life and soul. And Holy Tower has to reflect that. We want to support Stetson's recognition that remembering matters and that it's part of the value set and it's part of what we teach.
The synergy that's been created between memorializing what took place in Innsbruck, while at the same time preserving a very important part of our physical history at Stetson University in DeLand, it's truly remarkable and inspiring.
I think the reconstruction of Holy Tower holds great promise and hope to bring together parts of the DeLand community and perhaps even parts of Central Florida to celebrate in ways that we have not celebrated in several decades.
My hope would be that with the rebuilding of the tower, it would become to our community again what it was when I arrived at Stetson 50 years ago.
We just hosted a charrette on campus with our architects to build a community vision together about what we want this space around the historic restoration of Holy Tower to be.
I thought the charrette was going to be just a few people in a little conference room, and I was going to sit in the back and, just listen. I was not prepared for a huge room of all those people and all the people on Zoom.
We have alumni, legacy families, state officials, local officials, community members, neighbors.
Everybody's opinion matters. And I'm so heartened to see that.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what our students do in building their own traditions around the Holy Tower space.
Having Holy Tower built back up would be a great way to just bring the community back together, a great way for us to reflect, for us to remember, and just cherish those past and new memories that we're going to build.
This project is a commitment. It's the university saying, yes, we will in fact preserve our history, and we will learn from that history, and we will grow from it.
The memory of our 3 fallen classmates will never fall upon silence again. They will continue to live on through those bells, and we hope everybody hearing this will want to join in restoring something that has meant so much to past Stetson students, and hopefully will be able to continue to be important into the future.
As Mrs. Grassmeyer told us, these bells last 1,000 years. Well, that's a long time.